Hey guys, this is Frank Yecker, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
Hey, this is Rich Franklin.
What's up, everybody? This is Chris Lieben. This is Diego Sanchez. Randy Couture.
Alistair Overeem.
Hi, this is Stephen Bonner.
This is Don Fry.
Hey, I'm Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis.
TJ Dillashaw.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Welcome to Submission Radio Special Edition covering Mayweather, McGregor. I'm Dennis Grove here with Kasper Rosalowski with a very special guest, Sean Sheehan, on the line. Before we get into it, just want to let you guys know this is a special extra edition of Submission Radio. We have a normal episode coming out the normal time mid this week, so you can look forward to this. But this is like a little extra treat, a little extra snack, a sweet little snack in the middle of the night that your wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, or whoever you live with don't know about. And that little snack's name is Sean Sheehan, known from his great work from Severe MMA, Sherdog.com. He's very, very kind to join us from late at night in Ireland. He's a tired man, but he's a man with a lot of passion, a lot of heart, and he joins us here today. Sean, thanks for coming on to Submission Radio.
No problem, lads. Yeah, tired and emotional. It was a big weekend. I might be a little bit hoarse. It's been a big few weeks. You know, Graham, who runs Severe MMA with me, has been over working with Showtime for the last 6 weeks. So wow. I've basically been running the whole website and stuff for the last 6 weeks. So I'm just fit to fall down at this stage. I need a holiday. I need a month off.
I love it. And then just as you want to fall down, I somehow finagle you to come onto this program. So thank you very much. Let's quickly talk about yourself, though, Sean, and how you watched the event, because we released a post fight reaction video shortly, kind of after the fight, with me and Cass speak on camera about our initial reactions, and we sort of spoke about the fact that, you know, it was some delicious chicken wings, some delicious buffalo wings that Cass put together with some delicious blue cheese sauce. There was some cheezels, there was some caramel koalas, which is an Australian delicacy, some Freddo frogs. Fellas, how did you watch it, and what was the setup like?
I had a few friends down from up the country in Ireland, and there's some big JA matches, and Man United were playing as well, so we had a full day of it watching matches in the man cave and stuff. We had a barbecue a couple of hours before the fight. We went out for a few drinks, came back in and watched the fight there. Then I watched it again a couple of times today with a clearer head to get a better picture of it. But yeah, it was good fun anyway. You can probably hear it in my voice that I maybe a little bit too much fun even, but yeah, I think for a lot of people it actually was kind of an event where you could get people around to the house, you know, have a few drinks, have a barbecue or whatever like that, and the entertainment of it, I think people went a little bit like I went as well, because at the start I was like, you know, I wasn't too sure about it. This, you know, oh no, guy against the 49-0 champion. But then I think people came around and were kind of like, why am I being negative about this? Let's just be positive about it. Let's have a bit of a party. Let's enjoy it for what it is. And I think a lot of people actually did that, and you know, it turned out to be great fun.
And just curious, you said you went out. I'm fascinated. What was it like when you went out? Because the Irish vibe, I imagine Ireland sort of shuts down every time Conor McGregor fights, but more than ever for this fight. What was the vibe like when you went out? Was it different to a typical UFC event when he fights? And did you encounter any negativity there? Because it's hard to imagine anyone in Ireland being negative about this fight. Yeah,
there was no negativity. Like, I heard a lot of people saying "fuck the Mayweathers" to each other all the time. There was this viral video kind of going around of this comedian, you know, using it as kind of hello and goodbye, and then people were actually doing it. But
did you see that ESPN interview where the guy jumped in and was like "fuck the Mayweathers"?
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, crashed it.
It's getting good, but like, I live in kind of a small town, and you know, there's a few pubs and stuff. You wouldn't go out that often, so I only kind of went out because the lads were down, and I met a lot of people who I hadn't met in a long time, obviously, and you know, from Facebook and stuff, and they see my MMA work, and everyone seemed to I was surprised, maybe, oh, you know, who's going to win the fight this week, but people knew about it. Like, the education levels of people towards MMA and McGregor and stuff is just way more than I ever expected it to be. And you know, from someone who was kind of watching the sport when there was maybe like 5,000 fans in the whole country like 10 years ago or something, it's mad to think that people like in a small town know the intricacies of like 8-ounce gloves versus 10-ounce gloves, and the, you know, stance switches and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it was a mad weekend. It was, as Ariel and Petey and the lads love to say, it was surreal, definitely surreal watching it.
It's funny you speak about how, you know, more people than ever know about Conor McGregor and are sort of educated on Conor McGregor, because when you listen to the commentators, they look like they were literally seeing Conor McGregor for the first time ever, hadn't watched a single fight. And a lot of people throughout the week were sort of giving these predictions and saying these things, and they sounded like they'd never watched a Conor McGregor fight. What did you think of the commentary, and who did you guys get? Because I imagine over there in Europe, you guys would have gotten Dan Hardy. We didn't even get, we didn't get Paulie Malignaggi. We didn't get Mauro Ranallo. Who did you get, and what did you think of the commentary?
We had Sky Sports, and we had Adam Smith, Carol Froch, and Dan Hardy. I thought Dan Hardy was absolutely phenomenal, just brilliant. Called everything perfectly. Called good things for Conor well. Called good things for McGregor well, or for Mayweather well. But other than that, Tony Bellew actually as well was one of the guys doing analysis before and after fight, as was Matthew Macklin, who's an Irish former world title challenger, and I thought they both did a phenomenal job as well, explaining stuff. Dan Hardy was absolutely Carl Froch was absolutely horrendous. Just
why?
It was like you were saying there. He gave McGregor absolutely no credit for anything. They asked him at one stage, "Do you think McGregor had done well?" And he was like, "No, not right." No. They asked him, "Is there anything McGregor has done well?" And he's like, "No, not really. I expected him to be a lot better and to try a lot harder." He's like, this guy took at least 2, possibly 4 rounds off of one of the greatest fighters of all time, having never boxed before, and you're saying he didn't do anything well. Like, God Almighty, I was very, I was saying all along coming into this fight that I thought Mayweather would win, and he went out and won in kind of a way that I thought he would win. But still, McGregor did a lot better than I had predicted, than almost anyone, with an educated voice, with a biased fan voice had predicted, I think. And for a guy like Carl Froch to come out and just be totally biased, he had decided before the fight what was going to happen. And he had decided that if it went late like it did, it was because Floyd Mayweather was letting it go late. And that was definitely his game plan. But that doesn't take away from the fact that Conor McGregor did well early. And I think you have to acknowledge that. Dan Hardy did. He acknowledged when Mayweather was taking over and everything like that. There was no bias there at all. But I just thought Froch did a horrendous job.
What did you mentioned bias? What do you think those scorecards came down to? Because only one judge gave Conor McGregor, I think, 3 rounds. Everybody else only gave him 1 round, and that's the first. I think most people would agree he won the first 3 rounds, potentially even the 8th. What did you make of the judges being, not willing to give Conor any grounds? Was it bias? Was it some kind of, anti-McGregor bias, or do you think it just came down to poor judging on the night?
Yeah, I'm really not sure. I think it's probably the whole boxing thing. It's Floyd Mayweather in there against a guy who's not a boxer, and one guy scored it based on fighter A against fighter B, and it seemed like 2 judges scored it on Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather. That's the only explanation. Like, if you want to give Floyd the benefit of the doubt in every close round, McGregor won the first 2 hands down. There's no debate there, and you can say Floyd won the rest. Fair enough if they had said that. But to give Floyd the second, I thought that was horrendous. Floyd did nothing. Like, McGregor was bringing all the pressure. Floyd was blocking a lot of shots as well. Don't get me wrong. No, he wasn't destroying him or anything. But I think they were both clearly 10-9s. I thought the third one was as well. The fourth was close for the first minute and a half or such, and Floyd landed a pretty hard shot. I think it was a left hook, and kind of changed the fight a little bit. And then he got he got on top of McGregor. So I'm kind of leaning Floyd in the fourth, but it's definitely the closest one. But I thought the first 3 were pretty well set for McGregor. The fourth was close, and the rest I thought were definitely Floyd's. The 8th round was a little bit close, all right, but I think Floyd did enough late in that. The 9th as well was obviously Floyd's best round, but I think it was the best round, the best section of fighting that McGregor had in the later portion of the fight. In like the first minute of the 9th round, he was landing a lot of shots, brought up the pace, and it looked like he was getting his second win. Dan Hardy had said it in commentary that he's going to get his second win, and I kind of mentioned it last week as well when I was talking on the podcast and different things. It is definitely a reoccurring theme with McGregor that he comes in, gets tired, and gets a second win. But I think he got a little bit of a second win in the 9th, but then the fact Floyd took over midway through the 9th and landed by far the best shots of the fight in the end of that 9th, I think that kind of just ended McGregor's second win and ended his chances. But I thought he did. I thought he did really, really well, way better than I had expected.
And just on that, with the stoppage, some people weren't happy with it. Some people thought it was a bit early. Where do you stand on it? I was happy with it, by the way, but I'm just wondering where you stood on it.
I thought it was perfect. I thought he was very badly fatigued, as he said. But when fatigue leads to you taking 2 flush left hooks from Floyd Mayweather in a row, you have to stop it there. He wasn't, in MMA we see intelligently defending himself. He wasn't defending himself at all. He was open for 2 hard shots, and if Floyd had thrown another one, he would have landed a third. So I was perfectly fine with that. He wasn't defending himself. He was out on his feet. I could understand from McGregor's point of view that he wants to be put down. He wants to be finished like that, because I don't believe he was truly badly hurt. He landed a few hard shots. He staggered him at one stage as well, but I do think it was mostly fatigue and definitely an accumulation of shots as well, more than actually being badly hurt or anything. But you can't. That's how people get badly hurt in the boxing ring, is when they're leaving themselves open and they're taking shot after shot after shot after shot. I think he gave him a good enough chance to recover, get out of there, and stop taking shots, and he just wasn't able to do it.
Yeah, I'm with you. We said in our post-fight reaction as well that it kind of, there were some rounds a little bit earlier where you just kind of got the feeling that at some point it is going to get stopped. You could see Conor just getting more and more tired. He was trying to initiate the clinches, sort of lunging from really far out. And so, yeah, I have zero issue with the stoppage as well. Just curious, what did you think about Conor's unorthodox tactics, his game plan in general? And there was also a lot of criticism, and some of it rightly so. He was throwing the hammer fists. Some of those were hitting the back of the head of Floyd Mayweather. Some of them were hitting the top of Floyd Mayweather. What did you think about that? And I guess also the refereeing in the fight. There were times where Robert Byrd just didn't really seem to be doing a great job of initiating it. He was sometimes he'd let Conor McGregor get away with things, sometimes he wouldn't. There was also the body punch, the body shot that hurt Floyd Mayweather that he called a low blow. What did you think about all that, Sean?
Yeah, I think it's hard to criticize anything McGregor actually did, because he did so well, and surprisingly that. I don't know if he was unorthodox enough. He did some stand switches and stuff. He threw those hammer fists, which I thought were actually brilliant. Not exactly in the letter of the law in boxing or anything like that.
Yeah.
A few of them to the back of the head, but sure, if you can get away with them, get away with it. Do it, no problem. But look, I thought McGregor. Last week when I was kind of predicting what would happen in this fight and what the worst outcomes would be, I thought the worst thing McGregor could do is stand toe-to-toe in the pocket with Floyd Mayweather and go skill for skill with him. And that's kind of what he did. He did. There wasn't much clinching up. There wasn't McGregor way on the outside, coming in from long distance, trying to cover distance. It wasn't really that. Floyd wasn't on the back foot that much past the first 2 rounds. He was coming forward as well. And they kind of did go skill for skill. And I can't criticize McGregor too much. What I would have liked to see a little bit more is a little bit of roughhousing inside, a little bit of clinching or catching on to Floyd's shoulders. But as you mentioned, the referee there, he really wasn't letting him do that. I would have liked seen him switch up stances more, not go full orthodox for maybe a minute at a time or 45 seconds or something, and then use the switch as as something to come up on Floyd with, to surprise him with. But it's very hard to criticize anything he did, really. What I thought was the best thing really McGregor did, and the most shocking, was how well he actually did in the exchanges at speed wise. He was beating Mayweather for speed a lot of the times for the first 4 or 5 rounds. And I couldn't believe that. I never thought he'd be able to do that. I thought his head movement was absolutely excellent. I thought his footwork was excellent. I mentioned, there's this kind of this sidestep and throw your backhand without throwing a jab before it. Manny Pacquiao does it so well as a southpaw, and McGregor did that brilliantly, maybe 4 or 5 times in a fight. He actually did it once as well. I think it was in the 9th, and Mayweather timed it and just creased him across the face with a punch. And that was kind of one of the worst punches he took. But for him to be even trying that stuff was just that's high level footwork and movement and things like that. And I can't say enough good things about his performance, really.
And it's funny as well because the length, he used his length so well, that jab so well, and we saw Mayweather. He was really having trouble at the start timing his shots. When he was throwing them, they were off by just that little bit because McGregor was making it uncomfortable for him to get set and figure out the distance when he was throwing those punches. Sean, I'm curious because there's this thing going around now from a lot of people who watch the fight and a lot of boxing fans, a lot of Mayweather fans, that, they believe that Mayweather let this fight go longer than it could have. They believe that Mayweather wasn't, quote unquote, trying as hard during the first part of the fight and let it go a little bit longer because people paid money for the fight and wanted it to be an exciting fight. Where do you sit on that kind of, I suppose, commentary from a large majority of boxing and Mayweather fans at the moment on the internet?
When I'm coming into the fight, that was kind of what I was predicting. I predicted that Mayweather would just way better than him and let it go a little bit longer. He has the skill to do that. And he did do that in a way, but I think that was not trying to make the fight look good or trying to give people their money's worth. I think that was just his game plan. Like he knew early McGregor would be dangerous. He knows he hits hard. He knows he's going to be unorthodox. I think by the time the third round came around, I think Mayweather realized that this isn't a novice, like people are saying. This guy is actually better than I thought he was, and I think McGregor earned his respect somewhat. Look, you could see by what he was doing in the first 3 rounds. All he did was hit body shots. That was all he was doing. It was obvious that he was trying to take the wind of McGregor, trying to make him get tired by the fifth, sixth, seventh round, and that's exactly what he did. And the fact that he didn't just kind of tie with him for those rounds. He upped the pace. I think but literally every round the pace got upped, and he got better in all those rounds. So I think it was him coming back after 2 years away. I think it was him being very coy about what he was doing so he didn't get hit by McGregor. I think it was him, McGregor earning his respect, and I think it was his game plan just being pulled off perfectly. Floyd Mayweather, down through the years, has always been known as someone who will win in the easiest manner possible, and I think if he thought the easiest manner possible was to come out and go forward and knock McGregor out in 2 rounds, he probably would have done that. But I don't think he'd be that ballsy or something. I don't think and not ballsy isn't the right word. I think there's risk in that, and he's just a risk-averse fighter, and boxing is about hitting and not getting hit, and Floyd Mayweather did that very, very well on Saturday night with a long game plan, and I think it worked perfectly. But yeah, I don't buy into that theory that he did it on purpose to let it go long. I just think that was his game plan going into the fight.
And I think it was brilliant of Floyd Mayweather, and in a lot of ways expected also to, like you mentioned, let the fight go longer, not only let Conor go tired, but let Conor show all of his tools, and then we know who's got more experience. Then obviously Mayweather having more tools, sort of applying the pressure, coming forward and showing his experience. I'm curious, you spoke about some of the things that you were, that I guess surprised you in this fight. What was the biggest thing that you learned from this fight, or a couple of big takeaways, a couple of big things that you learned from this fight now that it's all said and done, Sean?
I think I learned that Conor McGregor is better than anyone has ever given him credit for. I wrote an article in it for Sherdog about this coming into it, that people were overestimating McGregor's chances coming into this, and if he had won or did well like he did, I think people would underestimate how he did, because the hype was so big. Conor McGregor was 3-1 coming into this fight, or around there. He should have been 100-1. Let's be honest here. This was a plot for one of the biggest upsets in the history of sport if he had won, and he won almost half the rounds. You could argue he won 4 rounds and only went 9 full rounds. That's unbelievably good. I literally can't stress how good that was, and that was kind of the shock to me, how well he did. As I said, as I mentioned earlier, his speed, his head movement have improved so much. I was talking to people in the camp, and they said when he goes back to MMA, he's just going to destroy everyone because he has improved so much. And we've seen this before, even with guys like GSP, who spend months and months and months with guys like, or maybe not months, but like long periods with guys like Freddie Roach in his boxing and in the wrestling department as well. And we saw that the results of that. I think McGregor doing this is just going to make him another level of MMA fighter, and I think it showed as well. And I think Luke Thomas mentioned this actually before the fight, after Jose Aldo footage came out of him boxing as well. I think the skill gap for the top strikers in MMA is actually less than we thought between boxers, and that's very surprising to me, and I think it's surprising to a lot of people. And there was an obvious skill gap there, between McGregor and Mayweather, especially after the first 3 rounds. But the fact that he was able to hang in there even for that long, to not get totally destroyed, where others probably would, where novice people were saying British champions or European champions would destroy McGregor. People were talking about Paulie Malignaggi. McGregor showed that he's no mug. He showed that he's a good fighter, a good boxer, and that he can hang with people, and that MMA fighters as well are a lot more skilled in each area of fighting than people give him credit for.
And I mean, now as we sort of bask in the aftermath of this fight, this huge fight that a lot of people didn't think was going to happen, me included, What does this loss ultimately do for McGregor in his name, do you think, Sean? Is he a bigger star now? This is all said and done. Has he won the respect from the boxing community to go back in there and do it again? Is he bigger than when he first went into it?
100% he's bigger, yeah. I think he gained a lot of respect from people. I think people watching that fight objectively, and maybe even not watching it objectively, saw what happened in those first few rounds. They're going to say, okay, Floyd was letting him do it, but he still did it. He still won a few rounds off Floyd. He took his defeat very, very well. McGregor does two things unbelievably well. He takes defeats very, very well, and he also analyzes his fights extremely well, quickly. It's even someone like myself or other people who do analysis watching the fights, we might need to watch it back, 2 or 3 different times. It's like McGregor is playing the Xbox and watching himself fight from above. He can just do it so well. I don't know how he does it, but he's unbelievably good at that. And I think people will appreciate that intelligence and that the class he showed as well afterwards. There's this thing with guys like McGregor and Mayweather as well, for instance, and stuff, and other guys, that all the build up, a lot of things are definitely said to sell pay-per-views, to create a buzz. But I think after all is said and done, that they come out and they maybe show the real sides of themselves, that they're not the person maybe they portray all the time. They're a classier person and are able to take defeat and victory well, and that's something that can be unusual with top stars like that. Like we saw where Ronda Rousey got her head kicked off by Holly Holm and was never seen again in the media and stuff like that. As McGregor said, I got choked out on live TV in front of millions of people, and I came back from that. So coming back from this, I don't think there is coming back from this. I think it was a loss, but it was as close to a win as he could possibly get without sparking out Floyd Mayweather, I think. So yeah, he's huge in MMA. I think he'll go back to MMA, to be honest. That Paulie Malignaggi fight could happen, but I think people are just sick to death of it at this stage. It got beyond denying there over the last week or two, and I think he will go back to MMA and have a big fight. And I think especially he wants to go back to MMA to see how much of a draw he is now. If that Nate Diaz fight happens, can that do over 2.5 million? Can that do upwards of 3 million? If it does, it's a game changer. Conor McGregor has brought the draw, has brought the huge drawing numbers that we thought were only possible with the likes of Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao in boxing over to MMA, and that is huge. So his next fight and the pay-per-view numbers for that are going to be very, very interesting. Yeah,
a couple of things. I think that, in this sense, I know that people sort of swept this whole boxing versus MMA storyline under the rug a little bit, but I think for, like we mentioned, a lot of boxing people, a lot of boxing fans, this was their first introduction to Conor McGregor. And I think in a lot of ways, a lot of these people sort of stuck in the old days where it's like, oh yeah, this is cage fighting. There are groin strikes. There are all these things that don't even exist in MMA. And when they see, our top draw going into boxing and looking really good against Floyd Mayweather, I think a lot of boxing people developed a respect for Conor McGregor. And you mentioned the way he took the loss, the honesty. To me and Dennis was kind of shocking, the way that, not really shocking because of anything about Conor McGregor in the past, but I guess just how honest he was about his mistakes, how happy he was, the fact that he wasn't a broken man, and why would you be when you're making so much money? But the way he spoke openly about the cardio and sort of gave his future opponents in some way, hey, here's an issue that I have. I do sort of fight in patches. What do you think about the way he spoke about that so openly? And I guess it gave his future opponents a showing in the chink of his armor.
Yeah, he actually talked about it before the fight as well. Oddly, because I actually mentioned on the podcast last week that about him talking about it, and Conor McGregor is someone who never shows any weakness, even if weaknesses are there.
Yeah.
People are talking about he's wrestling and grappling before, and he always kind of stood up for it or ignored the question or something. But this, he said something before. What exactly was it? He was talking about his cardio and talking about him. Even if he does fade, it's not going to matter because he's going to have him hurt and everything like that. And that was very unusual. And as you said, he mentioned it afterwards as well. So people. A lot of people's plans before were to take Conor McGregor down and, beat him on the ground. Now, a lot of people are going to be saying, a bit like Vitor Belfort and other guys, weather the storm, take him in 3, 4, 5 and finish him late. And look, that's a good game plan. But McGregor has so many tools to beat you early that's going to be very, very, very tough to do, and it's going to take a special guy to do that. kind of like Anthony Johnson. You know, he was destroying everybody, but it took a special guy like Daniel Cormier, who has the skill set, who has the chin, to take him past 1 and 2 rounds, and then gets into the third and fourth, and he can beat him. And I think Conor McGregor's a lot better of a fighter than Anthony Johnson. But that's definitely going to be the game plan going forward. People are going to look at that, and they'll see that as the blueprint to beat him. But as I said, that's easier said than done.
Just going back to what's next for him, Sean, you mentioned MMA, but in terms of opponents, are you looking at this Nate Diaz trilogy as the thing that makes sense to you most? Because, I saw Ariel Helwani did a little interview with Conor McGregor afterwards, and even though it was sort of in the aftermath and he didn't really want to commit to it, when he asked about that December card, to me it didn't really look like McGregor's 100% in at the moment to return in December and fight in the UFC. So if you had to pick an opponent in time, who would it be and when would it be that we'd see McGregor back?
Yeah, I don't think it'll be December either. I think making this interim UFC title fight is very, very odd. It was an odd decision. Like, he's basically an MMA fighter again now, and he has the title. Like, I don't know why they're making that. Maybe they're looking at that to bring him back. Maybe a little bit, not easier, but I don't know. Seeing how much he can draw himself, maybe, or with a fight that he thinks maybe that's not going to be as huge as the Nate Diaz fight, and build up to that, because there's a lot of things coming up the end of the year and things like that. But I suppose we'll see on that one. Look, if I was to predict, I think it'll probably be Nate Diaz. McGregor wants to fight, Diaz wants to fight, the UFC probably want to fight. They need to make money. They need big pay-per-view buys, and that's it for him. And McGregor wants to fight as well. That we all know it's probably not going to surpass this, but it's something that could get towards it. And there isn't many of those in the UFC. I've mentioned you guys before, George St. Pierre. If he wins that middleweight title, I would not be surprised if McGregor fought him for the middleweight title. Honestly, he's a mad bastard. He could do anything. Like he could do that. He could go up another weight and try to do that again. That fight has been talked about. Even if he loses, I could see him coming down, fighting a 170, or if GSP can get down lower than that, even maybe a catch weight or something like that. But I find it very hard to see him fighting Nate Diaz, Tony Ferguson, or Kevin Lee, or Habib, or whoever's around there. There's very few fights in the UFC at the moment. There's very few fighters who have the draw to fight Conor McGregor, because he's obviously the A side, but he needs a B side that's going to be good enough to help him get even further. That's kind of what guys' MO have always been. That's exactly what Floyd Mayweather did in this fight. Got a really, really good B-side to help bring him up, and Conor McGregor's kind of taken the baton from him now in the pay-per-view drawing sense, and his MO will be the exact same.
And what did you think of him at the post-fight press conference, labeling himself a free agent? Obviously he's not literally a free agent contractually, although I don't technically know what his exact contract is. But I imagine he's sort of trying to field offers from other people, and he can sort of use it as leverage. Even if he gets a bunch of offers from boxing promoters, even if those never happen, at least he can say to the UFC, hey, you want to pay me, X amount of millions. I've got an offer for, say, 30 million or 20 million from someone else. What did you sort of make of that? And do you think this really is it for the crossover between boxing and MMA? Or do you think with WME, IMG trying to, recoup some of that money, trying to make money in really any big fight, do you think they would ever tempt another boxing fight for McGregor?
Yeah, I definitely think it's possible. I know people are kind of sick of that man and thing, but if that draws money, they'll make it in 2 seconds. The free agents thing, McGregor always says things like that, and it might seem like a throwaway comment, but he doesn't mix up his words. He knows exactly what he's saying. I wouldn't mind seeing the great lads over in Below the Elbow who do work on this and stuff. What about the Ali Act? He's boxed, and now he's under the Ali Act, which means that he can have his choice of promoters, that a promoter, can't keep him under contract like that. Does that move over, does that work with MMA as well? Does that move over to MMA now that he is under the jurisdiction of the Ali Act? I'd like to see that. I know Paul Gift and the lads over on Bloody Elbow do great work on that, and those guys would definitely know better than me. But that could be something with it. It could also be Zuffa boxing is a thing that Dana White, he got those t-shirts printed up for a reason as well, that I don't think they'd be averse to putting on their own boxing matches where they can promote it just like they promote the UFC, and have McGregor fighting, or have possibly other guys fighting. No, I'd be very surprised if lots of guys, Bisping and Tony Bellew, there was talks of that, Stipe Miocic, Joshua, I would be very, very surprised if any of those happen. But I could definitely see McGregor going in again fighting against the likes of Paulie Malignaggi or someone else like that. But for now, I don't think that's happening. I think he's going to be fighting MMA next, and but it definitely is an interesting situation with that free agency stuff. And I don't think that's the last we've probably heard of that.
And as Mayweather wraps up his career, 50 and now he breaks the record. But at the same time, I feel like people weren't that hot on Mayweather when he finished up his career with a 49-0. We saw the Pacquiao fight, the fight after that people thought shouldn't have even happened. Do you feel like him retiring on this 50-0 after this fight with Conor McGregor does something for his legacy and sort of for fan perception, and is sort of a better way to go out than he did originally at 49-0?
Look, I don't think anyone believed he actually did go out at 49-0. I think everyone in kind of the boxing world, and who even follows it kind of sporadically like me maybe, or kind of a semi-casual, semi-hardcore, kind of knew that he'd always come back and make it 50, but I think your point, is fair. That Andre Berto fight, not many people watched it. It was kind of a damn squib after the Manny Pacquiao fight. And I don't think people respected him that much because he's obviously not the greatest human being in the world outside of the ring. His fighting style for the last number of years was, I actually like it. I love watching him fight. I just love the skill, but a lot of people don't like it. There's people like myself and other people who love watching the likes of him, the likes of Guillermo Rigondeaux and stuff, but other people just hate that. They like to see exciting, hard knocks, but Mayweather just doesn't really bring that. Now that he went out on this, you could definitely make that argument, but he also did it against an MMA fighter in his first fight, and that's always going to be the cloud that's shadowing over this. So I think to a lot of people, your point is correct. They will like him more for going out like this in a huge fight that was exciting against a dangerous guy, but I think a large section will also say he picked the opponent perfectly to make him the most money with the least risk. No matter, I know McGregor did very, very well, but he still, Mayweather was controlling that fight really for most of it, and his plan, to be safe early went well, and he's gone out with a lot of money, I'd say. So I don't think he's too bothered anyway what people think about him.
Yeah. As we wrap up, we'll let you go in just a moment, Sean, because we know it's late over there in Ireland. We're taking up a fair bit of your time. So just curious, as far as the pay-per-view numbers go, what do you think the final number will land on? If you had to predict, what do you think? And obviously there were issues. There were servers crashing over, I believe, on the West Coast, in California, in America. A lot of people, I believe, all over the world were having issues. People on Fight Pass, there were server issues there. Do you think that's something that will affect the final pay-per-view numbers negatively, or do you think that's just sort of, I guess, insight into just how much demand there was?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of both in that. I think it will affect the in number, but as you said, it also shows that it was going to be huge. I predicted beforehand that it'd just be less than Mayweather Pacquiao, and I think I'm kind of sticking with that. A lot of as well, because as I was saying, a lot of people kind of had barbecues, came together, watched it as a group, and I know that happens a lot for fights, but I think this one more than anyone, even because it was entertainment at the end of the day for a lot of people, so I think that could affect it too. I think it'll be huge. What's Pacquiao Mayweather? It's 4.4 million, is it? I think it'll be around 4. I think it'll be just over 4, but it wouldn't surprise me if it did beat it. But I think it'll be just underneath it. I could also see it beating the pay-per-view records on Sky. I don't think Sky realise how big of a following McGregor actually has in Ireland, and obviously we were paying for the pay-per-view too, and I think it could be absolutely huge there. So I'm looking forward to seeing those numbers if they ever release them.
And I'm just curious, how much were you guys paying? Because obviously people in America are paying $100. That's a pretty stiff price, but I get it. Here we were lucky; we got the regular $59.95. How much were you guys paying? Because and to my knowledge, you guys normally get pay-per-views for free, right? Like any UFC event, it's part of your cable package. You don't pay a one-time price, right?
Yeah, we always get the UFC pay-per-views for free. Boxing, sometimes the boxing pay-per-views, we have to pay for like all the Joshua fights and Mayweather Pacquiao and stuff. It was €25 in Ireland and £20 in the UK. So it's not too bad, yeah. But I suppose staying up until the middle of the night to watch it is a bit of a pain, all right. But yeah, I think some of the Joshua fights did something like 500,000 buys, which is pretty huge over here, and I think Pacquiao Mayweather did something around that too, a little bit less. So if McGregor and Mayweather can beat that, I think that it changes the game as well over here, because the pay-per-view market over here then is an option as well for the likes of the UFC and stuff. And they could organise a big fight in England or somewhere like that with McGregor, or in Ireland in Croke Park during the summer, and possibly do pay-per-view as well and use it. You're going to have obviously huge ticket sales in what is it, 75,000, 80,000 seater stadium in Croke Park, and then the pay-per-view with Sky as well. So that could definitely be an option for them, I think, if this does very, very well. And it's definitely a game changer, I think, if this pay-per-view does well for not just McGregor and not just the pay-per-view market over here, but also for the UFC. I've said it for years that the UFC, to have success in this region, especially the UK, because McGregor's kind of brought us Ireland, but in the UK they need Sky Sports, and I think if this does unbelievably well, Sky Sports will be after the UFC, and it could be absolutely huge for them.
Yeah. And also, just as we let you go, Sean, I'm curious, you mentioned staying up to the middle of the night. What time was it when the main event actually started over in Ireland? And what time did it finish? What time did you even get to sleep? Because here, we had it cruisy. We had it in the afternoon. Pay-per-view started at 11. I think the fight started around 1:30ish. We had it easy. What time were you guys battling till?
I think it was around 5 a.m. or so, which is around usually. Ended? Yeah. No, it started, I think. I'm not 100% sure now, but yeah, that's usually what we get for the UFC events. Usually rolling into bed around 7 o'clock. So it wasn't too bad, but I think a lot of people slept through it and things like that. But I think for hardened veterans like me and other MMA people, that we're so used to it now that it feels normal.
Yeah, Sean hasn't slept for the last 10 years, but hey, it's worthwhile, Sean, because your analysis is perfect. And just quickly, to all the Australian media out there right now, and mainstream media saying that Conor McGregor's fighting Jeff Horn possibly in November in Brisbane.
Oh, yeah.
Can you guys just please stop it? Because it's just getting ridiculous. All right. I just saw it on our morning sunrise type show where they're like, yep, they're definitely talking about it. What are they talking about? These people are just crazy. But anyway, Sean, thank you so much for coming on the program, guys. Make sure to follow Sean on Twitter at SeanSheenBA, of course. Severe MMA is the place to go. Make sure to check out their podcast. They're very, very sexy guys, and they do a great program. And also Sean's amazing articles on Sherdog.com. Make sure to check him out. The guy is he's worth so much more than Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather put together. How about that, Sean? That's a nice compliment.
I wish.
Hey, stop ruining the compliment. It's a nice compliment to go to sleep on over there, as it probably creeps up to 1 a.m. Guys, as I mentioned at the start of the episode, this is a little extra taste of Submission Ready. We're back mid this week with a proper show, so we'll catch you guys then, and thanks for tuning in.